Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗧 fell for his shy tutor partner part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story foodiecookie from Wattpad. So let's start the video. At first glance, he wasn't all that special. She doesn't quite understand as to why he takes up a lot of attention, whether it was good or bad. Maybe it was his vibrant green hair that easily stands out in a crowd. Perhaps it was the way he can easily smile at anyone's direction. Or maybe it was his habit of nibbling on the cap of his pen when he's deep in thought. Maybe it was all of them. Whatever his hidden charm was, it certainly drew her in. 𝗓𝗓𝗋. A voice belonging to her ravenet friend called out from beside her. The girl mentioned snapped her head away from her notebook and met her eyes. Did you understand? Momo repeated as she tapped on the equation on the page of her book. Sorry, what? The girl nervously smiled at her friend, spinning the pen in between her fingers. Momo snuck a peek into the notes she was busy jolting down when she was explaining only to see keywords like green hair and freckles. She held back a small smile at the infatuated girl. Midoriya. Really 𝗓𝗓𝗋. Momo teased the flushed girl while she pointed at the notebook on the desk. 𝗧𝗏𝗋 quickly shut the book as she muttered a small, "shut up," before covering it with one of her books. I mean, good choice, but seriously, you have to tell him someday, Momo encouraged the flustered girl. She quickly shook her head. Are you crazy? That's impossible to do. We're just acquaintances, let alone friends. Then get to know him. Momo gave her a quick nudge before motioning to a chuckling Midoriya on the other side of the classroom. That's easier said than done, she muttered. Why not just hit two birds with one stone? Momo suggested as her mouth crept up into a smile. Why don't I get Midoriya to tutor you instead? You certainly can't focus with him in your head, and I certainly know you don't want to fail. So why not get him to tutor you? Momo explained excitedly. It didn't seem like a bad idea at first, but thinking about it in detail seemed like such a bad idea. Wouldn't she get even more distracted with him tutoring her? 𝗧𝗓𝗋𝗋. Before the poor girl could decline her said idea, the ravenet had already left her seat and was headed towards the group of 3 at the other side of the classroom. It would certainly be way too obvious. Why ask him out of all people in class? Sure, he's intelligent, but she had Momo Yaoyorozu, the student who ranked first, as her friend. It's way too suspicious. Her eyes refused to leave the girl's figure as she conversed with the trio, occasionally pointing towards her friend's direction, who in response would simply sink back onto her chair in embarrassment. Most especially when she saw his head peek towards her for a few seconds. She hoped, prayed and begged that this was all some sick joke. But reality came hitting her in the face when she saw her friend walking towards her with Midoriya. 𝗓𝗓𝗋. He agreed to tutor you, isn't that great? Momo announced with a thumbs up. Choking on air seemed impossible, but at that moment she managed to do so. Words wouldn't come out of her mouth as she was unsure whether to thank her or complain. 𝗓𝗓𝗋. Right. I heard from Yaoyorozu about the problem. I'll be happy to tutor you. So I'll see you after class. He flashed a small smile waiting for her response. Just what did Momo say to Midoriya to get him to agree? But she wouldn't blame him. If it's helping someone, he'll surely do it. Yeah, of course, she managed to say as she gave him a small nod. He mirrored her response as he walked back to the other side of the classroom and began talking once again with Ida and Uraraka. Isn't this great, 𝗓𝗓𝗋? He agreed to tutor you till exams, she excitedly said, jolting her up from her seat. Till what? She refused to believe what she just heard from her friend's mouth. Till exams? That's a month from now. Exactly. Surely she didn't come early, right? Was a thought that kept lingering in her mind. She made sure to take her time and not be lined straight into the library the moment their teacher had dismissed them. Surely everything that happened during break time wasn't all some sweet fantasy scenario happening in her head, right? If that was the case, Momo wouldn't have dragged her to the library herself and wished her good luck. It just wouldn't make sense. But what also wouldn't make sense was Midoriya Izuku not showing up for the past 20 minutes she had been there. Truly, Midoriya isn't the type of person who would suddenly bail on something like this, right? Shuffling uncomfortably on her seat, she pulled out her notebook and began to flip through her books, choosing to simply take down notes to get her mind off of things. A sudden thought overcame her once she saw the neat handwriting on the corner of her book from her friend. Why does she like Izuku? Her train of thought was interrupted by the sound of squeaking sneakers rapidly approaching her table in the library. Looking up at her tutor who had his hands on his knees as he tried to catch his breath. "I'm really sorry 𝗬𝗏 came to talk to me after class and..." The poor boy continued to ramble on and bow in apology to the speechless girl. "It's alright, I didn't mind." She gave him an awkward smile as she awkwardly bobbed her head. Just what on earth was she doing? Apart from looking like a chicken that got their head cut off right in front of him, certainly that wasn't normal. Right." Quickly the boy pulled the chair in front of her as he set down his bag on the table. "Would it be alright if we just meet during Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays? I have training in other days," he informed her with a slight chuckle. "No problem, any help is greatly appreciated, so what's your weakness?" "Excuse me. What?" She began to chuckle at the way Midoriya had asked her the question. Midoriya, being the embarrassed boy he was, realized what he just asked and began to cover his face as he looked away from the girl. He began to twist his words as the heat rose up to his cheeks in embarrassment. "Probably memory," she replied to his question after masking away her chuckles with a cough and timid smile. "Memory," he repeated, tapping the cap of his pen on the table. "Yeah, I have a hard time remembering a lot of things," she replied with a shrug as she looked at the boy. But weirdly enough, she managed to remember all his mannerisms and habits. "Simp," she recalled Momo teased her when she mentioned that. Surely she wasn't a simp, right? Midoriya grabbed his bag as he began to dig inside, looking for something. Her curious eyes looked over as he pulled out a pad of green sticky notes. "I noticed you love note-taking as much as I do. So here's a trick I learned to remember something," he explained excitedly, passing the green pad towards her. "If ever I needed to remember something, I would usually note it down on these sticky notes," he told her, opening one of his books covered in different colored sticky notes. "It usually works for me." He let out a chuckle before sliding his notebook towards her. Honestly, she couldn't find words at that moment. How was she supposed to reply or even start up a conversation? She was the definition of awkward. You aren't much of a talker than what I expected. But that's okay, I can make it work. Let's start with a practice exercise, alright," he said, flipping the textbook as his pen wrote down an exercise problem for her. It wasn't that she wasn't much of a talker, it's just that she somehow can't find it to be herself around him. Surely if he was someone else, she would be as loud and bubbly as any other person. Sliding the problem towards the timid girl, she clicked on her pen as she nervously looked back and forth between the paper and textbook. Midoriya admitted that habit of hers was cute. However, she was far from what he expected. She was talkative in class and could easily get along with anybody, including Kaken, and that's saying something. So the awkward silence going around the table wasn't something he expected. Was he making it awkward? He hoped not. "You forgot to add the exponent," Midoriya pointed out as he examined the paper. "Sorry, I'll try and remember," the girl replied back, immediately taking the paper from his hands as she looked at the mistake she had done in the calculations. After a few small corrections and passing of papers, Izuku couldn't take the awkwardness in the air. It seemed as if it were to eat him whole. Suddenly an idea popped up in his head as he began to search through his bag once again before pulling out a scientific calculator. 07734. She read out loud from the calculator Midoriya passed to her. "No, silly, turn it around," he chuckled as he flipped the calculator around and handed it back to her. There in the calculator wrote the words "hello." She smiled before looking up at him. "What's this all about?" she asked, putting down the calculator. "It was just a little awkward, that's all, so I decided to break the ice," Izuku responded, scratching the back of his head. "You're not much of a talker, so I thought it would work." "I know it's a little silly and all," he began to ramble on before cutting it off with a soft apology. "But hey, I made you smile, right? Not a timid or awkward smile, but a sincere smile, right?" Izuku pointed out excitedly as he grinned in satisfaction. It wasn't surprising that Midoriya's smile was rubbing off on her as her lips rose up into a smile as well. "That's cute, what? So you're telling me nothing interesting happened?" Momo complained to the girl as she took a bite of her lunch. What interesting thing should happen? We're just studying. 𝗧𝗏𝗵 simply shrugged it off, chuckling at the emotion her friend wore on her face. Besides, being able to talk to him is enough for me. He's already such a big help for agreeing to tutor me, she told her friend, refusing to acknowledge the fact that she just openly told him he was cute yesterday. Maybe he gets that compliment often. Yeah, she certainly shouldn't dwell on it. You should really learn to make a move. Knowing Midoriya, he wouldn't make 1 inch. She nudged at the girl, earning a teasing chuckle from her in return. Are you crazy? Not a chance. If it were someone else I'd do it proudly, but Midoriya? Certainly not, the 𝗕𝗏𝗵𝗃 girl responded back. But this isn't fair. I was expecting something more exciting or unexpected, she sighed, taking a sip from her glass of water. He gave me his sticky notes and a worksheet with cute doodles on the front, if that counts. 𝗧𝗏 recalled remembering Izuku handing her a worksheet with a doodle of him and a chat bubble that says, "You can do it," on the corner of the paper. Simp, Momo whispered, giggling afterwards, seeing the reaction she got out of her friend. I am not, she retorted back. Suspicious, that sounds like something a simp would say, Momo teased back, earning a tickle attack from her friend in return. Stop. I'm about to throw up, Momo had complained in between gasps of air and laughter. I'm sorry, I'll stop, she managed to let out before her friend finally retreated her hands back to her lap. You finally called me by my first name? gushed at her friend, who blushed in embarrassment. Who knew tickling you would finally get it out of you, she told the ravenet, who was busy gasping for air. You seriously could have killed me, her friend told her, taking a sip of water. If I wanted, then maybe I would've. The girl grinned at her friend, who rose her eyebrow at her comment. You love me way too much to do that, Momo proudly said. But I love Midoriya more. 𝗧𝗏 stuck out her tongue at her friend. I'll believe it when you can say it to his face. Momo stuck out her tongue back. Touché, the girl gave a chuckle. Jirou's surely missing a lot, huh? Momo drifted off, shaking the juice box she intended to save. Hope she comes to school tomorrow. The lunch table isn't that chaotic without her. 𝗧𝗏 responded back, finishing her lunch and cleaning up. 𝗕/N, don't freak out, but Midoriya is looking here, Momo had lowly said, but loud enough for her friend to freeze at the mention of his name. Slowly looking around the cafeteria, she meets his eyes for a brief moment before looking towards her hands on the table. I looked at him, 𝗧𝗏 cursed as she peeked, seeing his figure still watching their lunch table. Language 𝗧𝗏, hissed Momo, who in return got a deadpan from the girl. Are you serious right now? She complained, gesturing over to the Baku squad not far from their table, who loudly screamed profanities every other minute. Is he still looking? She whispered to Momo, who looked around the cafeteria before nodding her head. Why is he looking? What? The girl complained. Her friend just watched her distressed figure hunched back on the lunch table as she nibbled on the straw of her juice box. Maybe he thought you were hot yesterday and now he's observing you, her friend suggested, earning a roll of eyes from her friend. Tell me something that I would actually believe, she chuckled. Midoriya isn't the type to check out people. If it were someone like Kaminari or Mineta, I'd believe. She held back a laugh at Momo's face at the mention of the great boy in their class. Please just no. Speaking of which, isn't he your partner for the upcoming presentation? Hey. Momo shushed her friend, who just laughed at her reaction. Isn't Bakugou your partner? Momo reminded before the 𝗕𝗏𝗵𝗃 girl shuddered in response. Don't freak out, but Midoriya is coming this way. Momo pointed at the approaching green-haired male a couple tables away from them. Oh, dumbass. The 𝗕𝗏𝗵𝗃 girl snapped her head towards the blonde male behind her. Surely she never thought of Katsuki Bakugou saving her from a dreaded situation, and yet here she is abruptly standing up from the presence of the blonde, muttering, presentation. Got it? Before pushing a complaining Bakugou out of the cafeteria to work on the project. Momo was still in the state of processing her friend abruptly leaving with Bakugou to not notice the presence of a green-haired student in front of her. Yarozu, the boy waved his hand in front of her face, snapping her out as she gasped, Midoriya? Can I ask you a question? He trailed off, unsure whether it was something he should ask or not. Sitting on the spot where 𝗧𝗏 previously sat, he began to fiddle with his fingers. Does 𝗬𝗃𝗁 hate me? He timidly asked. Somehow he just couldn't get the thought out of his head. She seemed like a person who's exciting, curious, and someone who never runs out of things to say. But whenever it comes to him, she's closed off like a clam. Momo couldn't help but crack a smile at the boy's question. She quickly covered it with her arm as her mind drifted off to, but I love Midoriya more, and hatred seemed way too far from whatever she was feeling for him. In fact, it was the opposite. What made you ask such a question? Momo rose up an eyebrow. Could her friend be sending mixed signals to the poor boy? Just a speculation, that's all. You're her close friend, and also I decided to ask you, he told her honestly. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 was certainly alright with everyone, including Kaken. But never him. Did she dislike him in some sort of way? I'm sure she doesn't hate you. But I can't say for sure cause I'm not her. Why not ask her yourself? Momo suggested. The green-haired student looked conflicted at the suggestion. Does Midoriya really think 𝗧𝗵𝗃 hates him? I'm alright, thank you for the response, Yaoyorozu. Midoriya flashed her a soft smile before standing up from the seat and rushing back towards his group of friends. Izuku made sure that he wasn't going to be late this time. Ignoring a yelling Ida from the classroom, he dashed to the hallway, almost tripping over his own feet in the process. Turning a corner, he pushed open the door, earning a few stares from the students in the library. Muttering a small apology under his breath, he made his way to the same table they used last Monday, seeing her books and items scattered around the table, yet the absence of the girl. Perhaps she went to the bathroom, muttered the boy under his breath as he pulled out numerous pieces of papers he had worked on the night before. She may hate me, but I'm gonna put effort into teaching her and maybe even get to know her a little bit. Compiling the papers, he placed them on top of the table before deciding to go and look around the library. Maybe he could start up a conversation with her. If he did, what would they talk about? He knew very little about the 𝗕𝗏𝗃-haired girl apart from her being new to the area. He knew that Momo and Jirou were close with her, but apart from obvious observations he knew very little. Maybe she likes All Might. That would be a conversation starter for sure. Lost in his thoughts, the green-haired boy turned the corner to see his quirky classmate, Denki Kaminari, conversing with 𝗓𝗏𝗁. After a couple of exchanges from the two students, he summoned up the courage to approach the two. Midoriya, my dude, Kaminari called out, causing the 𝗓𝗏𝗃 girl to abruptly turn around to see her tutor waving. Sorry if I interrupted something, he apologized, causing a chuckle from the blonde male. No worries, I was just about to leave anyway. Catch you later, 𝗧𝗏𝗁. Kaminari high-fived the girl, who in return smiled, shouting a goodbye to the boy, dashing out of the library. They're in a first-name basis, huh? I do know nothing about her. I didn't know you were close with Kaminari, Midoriya pointed out as they both walked back to the table. Denki. You could say we somewhat are, she shrugged. Kaminari would often approach her for small favors like delivering letters or maybe copy her homework, certainly not her mathematics. Taking their respective seats, Midoriya passed her the papers he worked on the previous night. Looking at the papers, she saw the familiar doodles with short messages decorated around the page. Not to mention that all the pages of exercises and notes were all handwritten. Do you mind the doodles? I can stop if you find them distracting, Midoriya asked before she shook her head no. It's all right. I find it more memorable this way, she commented, looking at a small drawing saying something along the lines of, I believe in you. Want to start with a small practice question? He asked, peeling a small sticky note and writing something down. Let's do it, she began, tapping the head of the eraser on her cheek before finally solving the question. I was meaning to ask you, what are your thoughts? Midoriya started off the conversation once again, trying to break the ice, or at least find out more about the girl in front of him. However, this caught 𝗧𝗏𝗁 off guard. What did he mean by that? Was she too obvious that she was crushing on him? Thoughts on what exactly? Thoughts on me, her eyes widened. Does he know? Did Momo tell him? Just what on earth did Momo say to him back in the lunchroom, while she was arguing about something stupid like whether you bite or lick your ice cream with bakugou? You're alright, Blyce? He was amazing in every way he was. He seemed like the person who would treat you like you meant the whole world to him. He seemed like someone who won't fall with you but rather the person that would pick you up from the fall. Her thoughts on him seemed like the calculus right in front of her. It's one of the things that she finds the hardest to explain and understand. But of course she couldn't tell him that. Oh, was all Midoriya could say. She never said that she hated him, so that was a plus. He already got his answer and yet he wanted to know more. More about the girl in front of him who seemed very closed off and timid around him. The girl who could get along with everybody. The girl he doesn't know that well. What's with the sudden question, Midoriya? She asked, looking up from her paper. Should he just be honest and straight up ask her if she hated him? But even if he did, he was afraid of the answer. I just wanted to get to know more about you, he answered. Technically, he didn't lie. He truly wanted to get to know about her more, and he hoped she felt that she wanted to get to know more about him too. Since we're gonna see each other every other day till exams, I thought that we could get to know each other more, you know. He trailed off, shrinking at the sight of the stare from the girl. Did she not want to? Do you not want to? Unaware of the rapid palpitations of her heart, she fought back, the smile creeping up onto her face. I'd love to, she replied back, a bit too enthusiastic. Let's ask each other one question at the end of each session, he suggested, getting a sticky note from the pad and handing one to her as well. Anyways, with that put aside, how's the practice question? What's your favorite dish? Midoriya read out loud from the sticky note the girl handed to him. Is there something wrong with the question? Not at all, it's just something you wouldn't normally see as a first question to get to know someone, Midoriya grinned. I believe that I can get to know a person best through their taste in food, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 defended her question, earning a laugh from the boy. How so? If you like salty foods, then maybe you're salty. I don't know, the girl shrugged with a small smile. So if I say that I like sweets, would that make me sweet? Izuku wondered out loud. You are, what? What? Whatever, just don't question my question. She crossed her arms, earning an eye roll from Midoriya. When it comes to food, she's certainly a lot more talkative. Well, to answer your question, my favorite dish is katsudon, he answered. I don't need to explain myself, it's my favorite 'cause it's delicious, he added, his mind suddenly drifting off to a delicious bowl of katsudon. With all this food talk, he's certainly gonna have it for lunch the next day. I guess it's alright, she commented. Alright? Just alright. It's amazing. Izuku exaggerated with his hands. I'll be having it for lunch tomorrow. I'll make sure to bring you some, he added. After a few moments pass, he hands over his sticky note towards her. In neat handwriting read, name something you like. Looking up from the small sticky note, she said to him, I like you, was what 𝗧𝗵𝗃 wished she said. If that wasn't what you said, then what the heck did you say? Momo complained. This was the interesting news she had been waiting for, and yet somehow she knew that a confession to happen anytime soon would be getting her hopes up too high. I told him I liked literature and books and stuff, shrugged the 𝗕𝗫 girl. It certainly wasn't a lie, she liked reading. You mean reading fanfictions? The purple-haired girl pointed out from beside her, earning a cackle from Yaoruzo. Shut up, Jirou, you just got back and you're treating me like this, whined 𝗧𝗵𝗃, earning a slap on the shoulder from Momo. Language, hissed the girl. It's true though, Jirou retorted back. She was just in the middle of recovering from a bad case of the flu, causing her to miss out on all the juicy details of 𝗧𝗵𝗃's love life. So of course, they had to fill her in on the details. So you're telling me that I missed out on all of this? The purple-haired girl complained, cursing herself for catching a cold this past few days. Yeah, pretty much, the two girls chorused. You know, you could have told me. I'm seriously just on the 3rd floor, Jirou complained. Besides, Yaoruzo, you brought me tea the other day. You could have filled me in on this. In my defense, actual tea would be better for you during that time than gossip tea, Momo defended. Anyways, don't tell me it just ended there. She urged the 𝗕𝗫-haired girl to continue on with her story. We discussed about a few books and stuff before he gave me the final notes, then we left. She summed up the rest of the story and ended it right there. That's it. There's no, can I have your number? Or perhaps, let's walk going to the dorms together, or something. Momo looked like she came out of a movie she paid for, unsatisfied. He told me he had to visit All Might back in the office after. Besides, he is my tutor, so of course we had to talk about all the boring stuff. 𝗧/and emphasized on the word, is, to remind them that Midoriya was there to teach. Nothing more and nothing less. At least in his point of view. I'm starting to believe Todoroki is right, Is he All Might's secret love child or something? Jirou whispered, earning a snicker from Momo. Where on earth did that come from? 𝗧𝗵𝗃 choked on air as she heard the words come out of her friend's mouth. All Might did have some sort of connection to Midoriya, but she just can't quite put her finger on it. Calm down, 𝗧𝗵𝗃, it's just a rumor. But hey, if ever he is his love child, then All Might is gonna be your father-in-law, gushed Momo, causing the poor 𝗬/C girl to choke on her saliva. Father-in-law. He's my tutor. We aren't getting married, she laughed it off. Unless nah. But a girl could dream. Yet. You aren't getting married yet, 𝗓/N, corrected Momo. 𝗧/N stuck out her tongue in reply. 𝗓/N, called out a voice from across the room. The three girls snapped their head towards the green-haired student approaching them with something in his hands. Midoriya's approaching. Act natural, Jirou announced before looking away and playing with her ears. Momo doing the same, but rather opening up a textbook and pretending to read from it. 𝗓/N. Midoriya finally approaching the table waved a hand in front of the girl's face. I love child, love child. Midoriya repeated the words from the girl underneath his breath. What did she mean by that? A sudden memory of a certain soba-loving friend of his, flashbacks into his mind, causing a shudder to form on his spine. I mean glove-styled, right, Jirou, your hero costume and all. The embarrassed girl nudged her friend who was choking back a laugh. Yeah, of course, Jirou just nodded before burying her face on her hands. Okay. Anyways, here's the katsudon I told you I'd bring. I'm not the best cook, I'll admit, but I do hope you enjoy it. He handed her a warm bento box before saying his goodbye and going back to his seat with Ida and Uraraka. Love child, nudged Momo, finally putting down the book and laughing hysterically. Jirou couldn't hold it back anymore and joined the ravinette, causing the 𝗓/C-haired girl to sink back into her chair embarrassed. Why'd you have to tell me that rumor? Now I can't unsee it, she said, muffled by her hands on her face. But hey, just saying, giving someone you tutor a bento isn't something a normal tutor would do, Jirou pointed out, tapping on the bento box on her desk. Please don't give my imagination fuel. This is just the result of the sticky note game we played yesterday. She brushed off the playful stares of her friends. Despite the words that came out of her mouth, her heart was surely something else. She felt touched by the gesture. Of course she was freaking out, it's her crush's cooking. Specially given to her by him. Whose heart wouldn't flutter? 𝗓𝗏𝗵𝗆, the three girls chorused as they picked up their chopsticks ready to dig into their lunches. I've been waiting for this. Jirou had immediately started eating up most of her lunch. She couldn't enjoy her food that well these past few days because of the stupid flu, so the food right before her seemed like the most delicious meal she had ever gotten. Quickly unwrapping the cloth, she was met with a green sticky note stuck to the lid of the lunchbox. I'm not the best at cooking. You mentioned that food is the best way to get to know a person. So I tried my best to make it leave a good impression on you. If it's too salty, then maybe I'm just salty. A smile appeared on her face the moment she read the last bit of the note, knowing that he had quoted her words the day before. Putting the sticky note in her pocket, she opened the lunchbox and started to dig in. Oh, by the way, I was meaning to ask, what were you doing in my dorm late at night? 𝗧/N. Jirou asked the girl who seemed to be enjoying her lunch. Huh? What do you mean? She tried to play dumb. I know that wasn't a fever dream. I know you took a picture of me. Momo rose an eyebrow at the weird conversation that was brought up in their table. Denki bribed me. He needed a sick photo of you for blackmail purposes and I needed instant noodles. So, 𝗧/N trailed off. A blush spread across Jirou's cheeks as she rose up from her seat. Kaminari Denki. She shouted out, earning a couple of stares from other tables. A blonde head popped up from one of the tables and began running out the lunchroom doors, of course, with a fuming Jirou right behind his tail. It's good to have us three complete again, huh? Momo smiled as she took a slurp off of her noodles. You could say that again, 𝗧/N replied back, taking a bite off her lunch before seeing a pair of green eyes staring at her from across the room. She sunk back down to her seat before smiling at him and doing a thumbs up to signify that it was good. The green-haired boy smiled back before looking back at his friends. Where's Momo? Asked the 𝗓/C-haired girl to her friend who had her earphones plugged in. Jirou, pulling one butt out, looked back at the girl who gave her a questioning stare. Can you repeat that? I said, "Where's Momo?" she repeated, feeling a sense of difference in the air. She was used to Momo walking her to the library. Not that walking there with Jirou was a problem, but rather it was something she wasn't used to. Ida had her stay in the classroom to talk about something. "You know, class rep stuff," shrugged Jirou. She nodded, forgetting that her best friend was a class representative. "Ah, I was meaning to ask, what type of music do you listen to?" 𝗧𝗵𝗃 tried to start up a conversation as they walked down the stairs. The purple-haired girl flushed a tint of pink before fiddling with her earphone's wires. "It really depends on my mood. But usually rock." Jirou opened her phone as she scrolled through her playlist before choosing a song to play. Honestly, music is a great way to get to know a person, Jirou thought out loud, earning a glance from the girl. "How does that work?" "Well, to me it says a lot about their personality. Do they listen to songs that are upbeat, slow-paced, rap, or even pop? It can say a lot." As she was explaining, the 𝗕𝗫𝗁 girl could see the spark light up in her friend's eyes. "She's certainly really passionate with the topic of music." I guess you're right." Pulling out her own pair of earphones, she opened her music player before settling on a song. "I'm late again," Midoriya huffed as he ran past the corridors. Why do people suddenly come to him after school? Especially on days he should be with 𝗕/𝑛 in the library. Passing a number of students, he made his way to the table, seeing her figure resting on the chair. Her eyes were glued on the page of the book to notice the arrival of her tutor. "I'm sorry I'm late again. Todoroki dragged me to the vending machine asking me my opinion on what's the best type of milk to get." Midoriya apologized, but somehow it seemed as if the girl in front of him couldn't hear him. 𝗕/𝑛. Lightly pulling down the book that she was reading, she jumped back the moment she met his gentle eyes. "And Midoriya." Quickly pulling out an earphone, she straightened her posture as she put away the book that she was previously reading. Izuku's eyes widened in realization that the girl couldn't hear him due to the earphones. "Sorry I couldn't hear you," the girl apologized, but Izuku shook his head, saying that it was all right. "Hey, what type of music do you listen to?" The girl blushed at the thought of Midoriya listening to the type of songs she's listening to. She had nothing to hide, but a playlist is somewhat like a diary to her. Surely it can't be just her thinking that way, right? "Just this and that," she nervously laughed, twirling the earbud between her fingers. Did she get that habit from Jirou? Maybe. "Mind if I listen?" Midoriya seemed timid in asking her. He was already making some sort of progress on getting to know the timid girl, so messing up was not an option for him. She seemed unsure at first, but seeing his cautious yet curious gaze, she ended up nodding her head. The boy seemed relieved in some sort of way. She handed him the other earbud as he plugged it in his ear. He was awkwardly sprawled on top the table, considering that he was right across from her. He certainly couldn't work like this, and he's certain she can't work like this either. "Wait, hold on." Midoriya removed the earbud from his ear, leaving the table. Did he not like her music? If that was the case, that would have probably be the most awkward rejection ever recorded. A few moments later, Midoriya came back, pulling a chair alongside him as he dragged it right beside her. "Do you mind if I sit beside you for today? It's a lot easier to listen," Midoriya asked, glancing at the chair beside her. In reality, he enjoyed her taste in music. Certainly, it was unique and something he wouldn't easily expect she would be listening to. "Of course," she said, way too eagerly, earning a confused stare from Midoriya. "Way too smooth, 𝗧𝗵𝗃." Shrugging it off, he took a seat beside her and made himself comfortable. She handed him the other earpiece as he inserted it in his ear. "All right, ready for today's practice question." Wait, how can she focus when he's right there? Sharing the other half of her earphones. "Wait, don't tell me he's gonna tutor me like this." He did tutor her like that. At least for the first few moments before Tsuyu, the cute frog girl from their class, came in and asked for Midoriya's notes, resulting the boy to stand up from where he sat to grab the notebook and ended up choosing to sit across from her once again. But hey, it was amazing while it lasted. Ready to 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗆. Izuku snapped her out of her thoughts, swaying the familiar green sticky note in the air. She wasn't sure what question to ask the male, so that left her with a blank note. Should she just go with something like, "What's your favorite color?" despite it being obviously green? Or perhaps a simple question like, "Who's your favorite pro hero?" knowing well that it was all might. Should she ask about his family? But it would be a very risky question to ask him. What if it was a touchy subject to him? She shouldn't risk it. Agreeing to just write whatever felt right, she begun to scribble down a question before switching notes with him. I started first yesterday, so you start today, the male urged her. Who's your favorite singer? So why? The question seemed to make her think for a moment. There were a lot to choose from. Hey, you said one question per day. You asked 2" the girl teased Izuku as she pointed at the sticky note. The tone from the girl took the green-haired male by surprise. Hey, give me a break, I want to know more, he defended. She stared at him for a brief moment before responding. Well, I guess it's name of favorite singer/band. Just cause she ended it there. She can't really explain why she likes them other than saying that she likes them, if that makes sense. But honestly, Jirou is really great too. Her music and vocals are amazing. The girl recalled her and Momo barging into her dorm room late at night and forcing her to sing them a lullaby. Whoa, you got to hear her music. You guys are definitely close, Midoriya commented. Anyways, it's your turn. Oh right. The boy looked down at his note only to smile. I guess we have a theme today, he mumbled. What's your favorite song? Was written in neat cursive. My favorite song, huh? His mind drifted off to the numerous songs in his playlist. A friend told me it tells a lot about a person, she mumbled but loud enough for Midoriya to hear. There's so much to choose from, he wondered out loud. He pulled out his phone as he scrolled through his list of songs. Maybe this one. No, this one. Oh, but this one is good too, the green-haired male begun mumbling to himself the more he thought harder. There it was, a certain habit of his that she only got to see from afar. Would it be weird to admit that she actually found it adorable when he thinks out loud? No, I'm not a simp. I refuse to be called that way, she mentally cursed herself. Momo was surely getting to her. How about this, let's trade playlists for the weekend, she suggested, stopping Midoriya in the midst of his thoughts. Well, I just thought it would be a cool idea. If you don't want to, that's okay too, was she crossing boundaries? Momo and 𝗬𝗪 mentioned to make a move, but this was all purely accidental. It just suddenly came out. Maybe she should take her words back before, that's a great idea. Here's mine. He eagerly showed her his list of songs as he handed his phone to her. She was surprised at his sudden willingness to trade playlists with her for the weekend. Did he not find it a tad bit weird? But hey, it wasn't a dead giveaway, right? Let's trade playlists for the weekend certainly isn't something like, hey, I love you so much, so let's get married right here right now. Shaking away her thoughts, she handed him her phone. Of course, after double-checking on her recent searched and opened applications just in case. Great. I have my playlist for the weekend. Izuku cheered as he browsed through the new songs in his phone. I'll surely be listening to this in the weekend, she smiled to herself as she shut off her phone and slid it into her pocket. The rays of the sun peeked behind the curtains of her room as she sat on her desk indulging a cup of tea and a good book. A loose, comfortable sweater hung on her shoulders as she enjoyed the blessing of a Saturday morning. At least that was what she wanted. Ted never expected that her ideal stress-free Saturday meant standing in the middle of a crowded mall in a pair of loose sweatpants. And yet here she is doing just that, as her Ravenette friend dragged her all around the shopping center. Tell me why 𝗬𝗪 didn't come, whined the tired girl. It didn't seem fair that she had to sacrifice her own weekend while her music-loving friend was enjoying her peaceful slumber. She's gonna come later on, shrugged Momo. She would have dragged her out like what she did with L/N, but she didn't find it ideal to have her eardrums broken in the morning of a fine weekend. Besides, she can easily treat the girl for putting up with her. The girl replied with a groan as she sat back on the store's chair. She could have been binge-watching a good series right now, or maybe catch Midoriya on his morning run. But no, she just had to be dragged outside her dorm at 7 a.m. in the morning. This looks good on you, let's buy it. Momo excitedly held up a casual dress in front of her. It's really cheap too, her friend added, handing her the hanger. Momo, you don't have to, she choked on her own saliva the moment she saw the price tag hanging on the dress. Shut the hell your mouth. The numbers are longer than my phone number, she practically screeched, earning a few stares from the other people in the store. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 made sure to cut off herself the moment she saw Momo glare at her. If she could put creative cursing as her talent and quirk, people would surely believe it. What do you mean? It's a reasonable price, the dark-eyed girl defended. Sometimes she forgets that her best friend is not only one of the intelligent students of their class, but also one of the richest. Seriously, you know you could make the same replica of every item in this shop, right? 𝗧𝗵𝗲 reasoned out as she gestured around the shop. Surely, if she was blessed with a quirk like that, she'd use it all the time. Still, it doesn't mean that I can't spoil you. 𝗬𝗪𝗠, she added, pinching the girl's cheek. Admittedly, Momo was feeling guilty for dragging her to the mall. But at the same time she was feeling thankful that she had a friend that puts up with her. Even if it means sneaking into her dorm room at dawn. I can't believe an inanimate object is better at matchmaking than me, Momo complained as she placed down her cup of tea on the table. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 always cheered up if the topic was Midoriya, so of course she had to open up that topic. It was purely coincidental though, she tried to hide the blush creeping up onto her face as she recalled his low hums as he sang along to the song playing in the earphone they had shared. What was it that made butterflies in her stomach? Maybe it was the way he tapped his pen to the beat of the song, maybe the way his head bopped to the rhythm, or maybe the way his lips curve up into a smile as he excitedly says, "I love this song." Coincidental. It sounds planned to me, Momo teased the girl, causing her blush to deepen. Trust me, it isn't, she chuckled, pushing the girl away. Momo yayaruzo. 𝗧𝗵𝗲. A squeal came from the door of the cafe, causing both their heads to snap towards that direction. There stood a familiar pink-headed girl, Mina Ishido, alongside Kirishima, Siro, and Bakugou. Mina, what brings you here? Momo asked, surprised to see them in the mall at an early time. Usually their group would wake up around the middle of the afternoon. We're meeting up with our partners. We couldn't find time after school, so we scheduled a meet-up in the weekend instead, the pink-haired girl cheerily replied. What are you doing here then? 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Bakugou, who in reply glared back. If she remembered correctly, she was his partner and they had recently finished up their project. Meeting up in a weekend was a waste of time, according to Bakugou, and yet here he was standing right in front of her. Shitty hair made me come, he grumbled under his breath. She's somewhat related to the poor blonde boy. He was dragged here in a similar way she was. His red eyes scanned her before clicking his tongue. You look like 𝗧𝗵𝗲, he commented, causing the girl to frown at him. I don't dress for you, she retorted back at the male. Yeah, whatever. Oh, Midoriya is my partner. The conversation happening behind her, that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was tuning out, caught her attention. Turning her focus away from Bakugou, she met eyes with the said partner of Midoriya, who was none other than Kirishima Ijiro. Who's your what now? Now that you mention it, he'll be here in a couple minutes, Kirishima announced, glancing at his phone and outside the cafe door. A sudden thought crossed her mind. Looking down at her attire, she mentally face-bombed. I look like 𝗧𝗓𝗔. Quickly saying goodbye to Momo and her classmates, she practically ran to the door. There was no way Midoriya was gonna see her in her comfort clothes. Bumping into someone, she quickly bowed in apology before speeding away from the mall. Hey Midoriya, do we need this? The redhead called out to him as he showed him a plush toy of a white shark. Midoriya chuckled, shaking his head, earning a downcast look from his partner. Why not? It's so manly. Not to mention, it looks like me. See, he flashed him a toothy grin as he put the plush close to his face, showing their similar sharp teeth. After a few distractions and tossing a couple of supplies into the basket, they made their way to the checkout area to pay for their items. Hey Midoriya, I don't think we need so many of these. A curious Kirishima pulled out multiple packs of sticky notes. Oh, it's for something. Midoriya chuckled at the thought. He didn't know why he put so much in the basket. They only used 2 per session, and it wasn't even every day. Besides, it was only for a month. In fact, barely even a month. It was only 3 weeks left. Buying that much made it seem like he wanted to keep talking to her for a long time. Oh right, you should have came earlier. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was here. You could have said hi. Kirishima recalled the duo sitting in the cafe. Too bad she had to leave so early. Plus Midoriya looked at him puzzled. But I did see 𝗧𝗵𝗲, he responded, earning a confused look from his partner. She bumped into me when she was just exiting the cafe. I wanted to say hi, but she seemed to be in a hurry, Midoriya recalled seeing her in an oversized sweater and pair of sweatpants, her hair tied into a messy bun as she rushed out of the mall. He had to admit she looked cute. Even the greenest and lushest of forest can't compare to the appealing green his eyes held. Those eyes that hold a childlike dream. Those eyes that hold a appealing cluster of galaxies you can easily get lost into. Yet those same eyes seem to hold a deep mysterious forest even travelers are afraid to venture to. Ah yes, those same eyes are staring right into hers. Normally she wouldn't complain at something as small as feeling pressured under his gaze. But if that same gaze had been following her for the entire day, she certainly had the right to complain. It wasn't that she disliked it or felt uncomfortable, but rather she felt insecure. She has no idea how she looked like the entire day. Who knows what she looks like in the middle of classes, as she tried to stay awake for the lecture. Who knows what she looks like when she stuffs her face in lunch, or the way she looks like when she balances a pencil in between her lips and nose in random times of the day. Why does she do that? She has no idea either. But either way, who knows if she looked unattractive the entire day. It doesn't stop there. Thought that he would stop when she was directly right in front of him, turns out she was wrong. Playing with a strand of her hair, she brushes off the shavings of her eraser on the paper. She could have sworn she saw Midoriya's eyes steal a glance at her before going back to jolting something down on his notebook. Was there something on her face? Midoriya. I'm finished, she called out to the boy as she passed him her notebook. The boy's eyes soon separate from his notebook before taking her notes from her hand. You're doing really well. You got most of it correct. Good job. He complimented, not failing to notice a little doodle of a girl sleeping at the edge of her notebook. I got a talented teacher, that's why, she pointed out, earning a shy chuckle from the male. That's really sweet of you to say. Anyways, good job. We can start on fractions now, he happily announced as he began flipping through his textbook. The girl huffed out a puff of air as she buried her head in her arms. She hated fractions. Why make something more complicated when a fraction is similar to just saying, it's zero but also not zero? I hate fractions too. It just makes things more complicated, turning her head towards the male who laughed at the reaction of the girl. She's somewhat becoming comfortable with him, right? He hopes so. Why do we even need this? It's not like a villain is gonna be like, if X is whatever then find Y. If you don't answer in the next 15 seconds, the hostages will die. The 𝗧𝗵𝗲 girl mimicked a deep voice for the villain, causing Midoriya to burst out laughing. This is certainly a new side of her. He likes it. I mean, you get what I'm saying, right? That's such a bad threat. Who needs this? She frowned as she gestured onto the sets of questions and textbooks on the table. Well, hypothetically speaking, what if there's a math-loving villain or something? Pretend his quirk is something math and number related. Surely, it can happen, right? Midoriya suggested. Yeah, but that happening is nearly unlikely. Besides, wouldn't he be more likely to be a teacher than a villain? 𝗧/and reasoned out as she imagined a teacher similar to that. She felt a shiver run up her spine. I feel like that teacher would be scary, he commented, getting goosebumps. But either way, my statement still stands. No villain would ask a calculus question like that, she ranted on. Actually, your example was algebra, not calculus, he corrected the 𝗧/haired girl, earning an eye roll from her. She seemed to be in a good mood today, so Midoriya decided to tease her. Hey, did you actually answer this? You seem to not know the difference, so I'm skeptical, he swayed her notes in the air. Of course I did, I even did it in front of you, she crossed her arms against her chest. Who knows, hidden quirk maybe. He teased her, inching closer to her face, causing her to stick out her tongue at him. Quickly catching her actions, she immediately covered her mouth in embarrassment. Sticking out her tongue became a habit of hers whenever someone teases her. Certainly getting that habit due to Momo and Jirou's constant teasing. She could feel the heat rise up to her cheeks when Midoriya stared at her for a brief moment. Hey 𝗧/n, he called out, causing her to meet his eyes once again before he smiled and mirrored her actions. He stuck out his tongue as well. Ready to 𝗬𝗶𝗍? Midoriya asked as he waited for the conflicted girl, looking at her still blank note. What could she ask him? Should she ask him why he kept staring? But if she did, what if he answered with something like, I was looking at someone behind you? Surely that would be embarrassing. Stealing a glance at Midoriya, his eyes met hers as he flashed his signature sweet smile that always somehow encouraged her. Whatever, I don't care. I'm curious as heck. Switching papers, they read the note before Midoriya decides to answer first. Was I staring? His voice cracked a bit at the end, causing him to cover his face to hide his embarrassment. Why does he manage to shake up her heart with his small mannerisms? Yeah, you were, she softly said with a smile. She didn't want him to feel like she was upset with him. Can explain, he tumbled on his own words as he shakily pulled out a journal that had a destroyed cover. She had seen the familiar journal, but she never knew what was inside it, let alone the purpose of it. But she did know that he always kept it by his side. This is my journal of heroes. It may sound kinda childish and all, but somehow I never had the heart to put it down, he explained. She didn't think it was childish at all. She seemed impressed even. I don't think it's childish at all. It's amazing you had the dedication to fill it up till today, she complimented, causing Midoriya to shy away. Usually people would think it was childish or even creepy whenever he would pull out this busted notebook of his. But somehow, she thought it was cool. Thanks. But the reason why I was staring the whole day was because of this. He cut himself off as he flipped the journal on a specific page, causing her eyes to widen. That was her. I tried drawing you as accurately as I could. I'm very sorry if I stared, he bowed his head in apology. Her heart fluttered. Did Izukumidoriya really think that she was a hero worthy of writing about? It made her genuinely happy. You thought I'm worthy to write about? She asked, refusing to believe what he was showing her. Of course, you're interesting, he blurted out, causing the girl to blush. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. But it isn't done yet. I couldn't finish writing about you cause I know very little about you, he honestly admitted. No, don't tell me. I want to get to know you personally. So please don't tell me, he informed her. Besides, I have something new to write, he excitedly said before jolting down math next to the word dislike, causing her to smile. Anyways, it's your turn, L/N, he urged her, causing her to look down at her note. What's your favorite book? Was written in blue ink. Oh, that's easy. It's book name, she immediately responded. That book was a true masterpiece in her eyes. Do you mind if I borrow it? Sure, I'll give it to you tomorrow. Midoriya practically collapsed onto his bed the moment he had reached his dorm room. His bag's contents spilling all over the bed as he falls face first onto his pillow. He felt every inch of his body ache in pain due to the intense training All Might had put him in throughout the entirety of the day. Despite this, he still had a long way to go before he could make this passed-down power his own. He felt his eyelids close as the exhaustion from today's activities finally caught up to him. Not only the activities but also the added side effect of recovery girl's quirk. Clasping his hands together, he examined the scars of his previous battles that decorated his hands. The scars that held his locked-up insecurities. I'm still not good enough, he breathed out. He was tired. Tired of carrying the weight of so many people's expectations of him to be the new face of justice. What if One for All wasn't truly meant for him? Deku-kun. A voice called from outside his door, followed by a series of knocks, snapped him out of his train of thought. Turning his head towards the direction of his door, he lets out a soft groan before sitting up from his position. Everything hurts. Lazily opening his door, he came face to face with the short brunette who smiled up at him. Uraraka. He seemed surprised to see the petite girl standing outside the doorway to his dorm. What brings you here? I brought you a meat bun. Knowing you won't go down till late at night. So I saved you one before it runs out. The chestnut-eyed girl handed him a plate with a warm meat bun. Thanks, Uraraka. He flashed a smile at her, who in return gave him a thumbs up. Anyways, don't forget to eat dinner. If you don't come down, I'll make Ida drag you to dinner, the girl threatened as she waved goodbye. No promises, he called out, but the girl had already disappeared out into the hallway. Closing the door to his room, he placed the plate by his bedside as he fell back onto his bed. Uraraka was really kind to bring him a plate, knowing that he was tired from his after-school activities. He was really thankful that he had a friend as kind as her. But he wasn't really hungry. Knock, knock, knock. Midoriya groaned in response to the knocking coming from his doorway. What was it this time? Knock knock knock. The knocking this time was a lot louder than the previous one. Slowly opening his eyes, he glanced over to his doorway. Did he fall asleep? He looked back at the plate by his bedside. He concluded that he fell asleep for quite a long time, judging from the now cold meat bun. Knock knock knock. The knocking was much softer than the two previous ones, followed by a few muffled murmurs. His eyes suddenly widen in realization. Did he unknowingly skip dinner and now he has to face the wrath of his two best friends? Quickly burying his face in his pillow, he concluded that he would not answer the knocking. Besides, his body was aching all over to even answer. Are you sure this is Midoriya's room? A soft voice asked from behind his door, causing the male to suddenly shoot up from his bed and tumble towards the door. The door swung open to reveal the 𝗕𝗫-haired girl, who looked rather surprised at the presence of the male, despite knowing that she was standing in front of his room. She wore an oversized sweater with bold letters that spelt All Might on the front and a pair of loose jogging pants. She looks so tiny in them, Midoriya thought as a smile tugged up on his face. 𝗕𝗫/and what brings you here? He asked, his voice still low from the nap he had taken. I was supposed to give you the book. The girl timidly responded, handing him the novel. Oh right, thank you. He grabbed the novel from her hands and began looking at the cover and flipping the pages open. I'm sorry, did I wake you up? She asked, causing the male to tilt his head to the side. What made you think I just woke up? He reversed the question to the girl, who in response just looked at him from head to toe. Midoriya blushed, noticing what had given away his tired state. To be fair, she was quite observant. I didn't have the time to change and I ended up taking a nap. He rubbed the back of his nape, a habit of his whenever he found himself embarrassed. The embarrassed boy had no idea how much her heart was beating at that exact moment. Could it be that she was flustered at how he could effortlessly flash her a tired smile? Maybe the way his hair was sticking out at different angles that made it look more fluffy than it already is. Or maybe the way his voice was still low and raspy from his sleep. Could it be that it was how adorable he looked explaining to her why he was still in his uniform, despite class ending 4 hours ago? Perhaps it was the way his always ironed uniform was now all wrinkled as his tie was loosened. Maybe it was all of them. Whatever it was, it certainly had the heat rise up to her cheeks. Sorry for waking you up again, she apologized. She could see how tired he looked and disrupting his desired rest seemed unfair. It's no problem. Thanks again for letting me borrow. He held up the book as the girl smiled in appreciation. You're welcome. I hope you enjoy it. Have a good night, Midoriya. She quickly bowed before turning the corner where Jirou and Momo had been hiding. I did it, the 𝗕𝗫-eyed girl proudly announced to her two friends, who gave her wide smiles. You owe me a pack of chips, Jirou nudged a defeated Momo, who lowly nodded her head. Seriously? You two were betting on me and Midoriya? The timid girl glared at the two, who refused to meet her eyes as they both wore teasing smiles. Of course, that's what makes us best friends. I wish I could have talked to her more, Midoriya thought, watching the girl disappear as she turned the corner. Closing the door to his dorm, he mentally cursed himself for not changing out of his uniform sooner. How embarrassing! He chuckled to himself, recalling the scenario that had just happened. Sitting back on his bed, he opened the novel, ready to get lost into the words of text written on the page. A sudden realization made Midoriya stop reading before he shrugged it off as a pure coincidence. After talking to her, I'm suddenly not tired any. But the male jokingly thought as a soft smile crept up onto his face. She knew that Midoriya tutoring her would lead into some awkward interactions, but nothing beats the awkward she's feeling right now. She uncomfortably shifted on her seat while his eyes refused to separate from her figure as he watched her intensely. Did I do it right? She spoke up, showing the male her notebook. It didn't matter if she had gotten the answer wrong, what mattered to her was to break the ice. Incorrect. You forgot to add the 1 inch, he concluded, circling the number she had forgotten to add before passing it back to her. And after that exchange, he continued to stare. Todoroki, you're sort of staring. 𝗧/and finally managed to say what was on her mind for the past 10 minutes. She had never thought that entering the library earlier than planned would lead to Shoto Todoroki taking Midoriya's place. All she wanted was to review their lesson. My apologies. Should I look elsewhere? The clueless boy tilted his head to the side. You know what, just do your thing. The 𝗬/𝐶-eyed girl awkwardly smiled, looking away from the two-toned boy and instead focused on the sets of equations in front of her. Midoriya asked me to keep you company since he might come later than expected, she recalled him say when she asked her of her tutor's whereabouts. At least he didn't want her waiting alone. Incorrect. Here, let me teach you. The boy that was previously just peeking at her notes was now pulling a chair to sit next to her. That's really nice of you, was all she managed to say before getting cut off by Todoroki teaching her a few tricks he had learned and used in his classes. Not gonna lie, his method made it a lot easier to answer. It's a lot easier now. Thank you, Todoroki. She was amazed by the tricks she had learned from him. She would have never expected help from her quiet classmate. You're welcome, he said. He doesn't really smile a lot. She kept herself busy by clouding her thoughts with the problems in front of her in order to distract her mind from looking back at the two-toned male's cold gaze. What was his problem? His stare was a lot more uncomfortable than Midoriya's. It felt as if his gaze was trying to push her off of a cliff with an iceberg. Is there something on my face? She managed to let out as she finally met his eyes. I don't think so, he replied back, resulting the girl to sigh in reply. Of course, he responded with a rational answer. What did she expect? I'm wondering why you keep staring at me. Did I do something wrong? She said to him. If she wanted the answer she was looking for, she had to tell him in a way the boy would understand. That meant she had to be as straightforward and rational as he was. You did nothing wrong. I'm simply observing if what Midoriya said was true, he replied back, causing the girl to perk up at the mention of her tutor's name. Midoriya talks about me, she asked the boy, who nodded his head in reply. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She hoped that whatever Midoriya was saying about her was good. What did he say? He told me that you were, Todoroki. 𝗬/N. A voice from across the library called out, causing the heterochromic-eyed male to stop mid-sentence. Sorry I took so long. Thanks for covering for me, Todoroki. Putting down his bag, he sat on the seat Todoroki previously sat, which was across from her and Todoroki. Of course. Don't forget your end of the deal. Standing up from beside her, he grabbed his bag as he pulled it over his shoulder. Yeah, you get my cold soba for a week, Midoriya chuckled at his friend's request in exchange for covering for him. The two-toned male nodded, satisfied of his reward, before bidding his goodbye to the couple on the table. Sorry I had to ask Todoroki to cover for me. How was he, by the way? Midoriya pulled out his textbook as he waited for her response. He's a great teacher, but he's very awkward. Not to mention that the table felt like it was gonna freeze at some point, she whispered to Midoriya, who in return chuckled. Well, it is his quirk after all, half cold, half hot, he reminded her, half joking. Admittedly, he is pretty good looking and hot, but he's still cold either way, the girl defended. If that's the case, should I just ask Todoroki to tutor you full-time? He seemed a bit taken aback by her statement, but it was a great opportunity to tease her. Please no, never again. It's my turn to start, isn't it? The girl asked, defeated. Izuku nodded in reply to her question as his eyes danced back and forth between the girl and his notebook. She found it hard to answer the question that was written for her. If you could choose to do anything for a day, what would it be and why? Was written on a neon pink sticky note. You asked two questions again. The girl caught the male, who guiltily refused to look her way. In my defense, the question wouldn't be complete without the why, he defended his actions. Who knows, what if you answer with, I want to rob a store, or something, and I don't know the answer why? That would keep me up at night, you know. He pouted, finally catching her eyes. Quickly looking away from his soft eyes gazing at her, she mentally scolded herself to calm down. He's just pouting. Why did that suddenly make her heart skip a beat? You think I'd rob a store? She eyed the male, who in response shrugged his shoulders. You're pretty unpredictable. So who knows what you're thinking of? I think of you, you idiot, she mentally thought before shaking it off. If I could choose to do anything for a day, it would probably be a train ride, she concluded her unorganized thoughts. Out of all the things she could pick, why choose a train ride? A train ride? But isn't that a usual thing to do? Midoriya asked the 𝗧/C-haired girl, who in response rested her chin on her palm as she stared off into the distance. I don't really know. But I know it's not just a normal train ride. I want to ride the train without really having anywhere in mind to go to. You know, a train ride where you don't know where it takes you, she thought out loud. That's a unique and appealing way of thinking. Midoriya poked the side of his cheek with the end of the pen as he thought about her words. It certainly sounds fun, he added. I don't know, okay. I want to ride a train, just cause. She ended it there, concluding that she didn't want to explain her unorganized thoughts further. Anyways, it's your turn, the girl urged the green-haired male who reread the note. Name something that had made you smile or laugh recently, he read from the note as he rose an eyebrow at the female. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 blushed a light shade of pink before shrugging her shoulders. It's a clever way to find out something that makes you happy. I'm just curious. Surprisingly, she managed to say what was on her mind. Plus, something that made me happy recently. He thought for a brief moment before he locked eyes with her, a small and shy smile forming on his lips. Is it possible to forget how to breath? 𝗧𝗵 tried to calm her beating heart as she raised her hand to knock on his door. No, I can't. She hesitated for a moment. Who would have thought that lending her favorite book to her crush would lead to getting an invitation to visit his room once again? Oh, the book? I sort of forgot to bring it today. Why not drop by my dorm room? I had some notes I've been meaning to give you, but never had a chance, she recalled the green-haired male say to her in between classes. After an hour of convincing herself, she found herself in front of his door. Hesitation was present in her eyes as multiple questions and what-if scenarios clouded her thoughts. She could easily get the book tomorrow when they're in the library. Besides, she could easily run back up her room and bundle up in a blanket to binge-watch some movies. Why did she need to overthink on such a small matter? But on the bright side, she gets to see Midoriya. I am a simp, she mumbled to herself with a mocking laugh. Finally deciding to just get the book tomorrow, she decided to leave. Just as she was about to turn and walk away, the door swung open, surprising her and the male. 𝗓𝗏𝑛. Her name suddenly came out of his mouth as she timidly waved at him with a smile. I was just about to go to you, he said, showing the familiar book in his hands. Oh really? How was the book? She asked, excited as stars danced in her eyes. A smile crept up on Midoriya's face as he passed the book back to her. It's a really great story. I couldn't believe the plot twist at the end. Too bad they didn't end up together, he rambled on about the story, causing the girl to smile up at the sight. I know, right? They were perfect for each other. The girl suddenly blurted out. She could never talk about the books she read with her friends. They weren't exactly the type to get excited over words on pages. So she was beyond happy to find out Midoriya had an interest in this sort of topic. There should be a book too. I can't accept the fact that they didn't get together, Midoriya announced, shaking his head. The girl frantically nodded her head in agreement. I guess you could say it was the right person at the wrong time, she suggested as he sighed in reply. It was a tragic ending, but you're right, he shrugged. I'll write the notes. Hold on, let me get them for you, he remembered, snapping his fingers before disappearing behind his door. Feeling bad for making her wait outside, he called out to her. You're free to come in, I don't mind. The 𝗓𝗏𝗃-haired girl hesitantly peeked inside his room before coming in. Her 𝗓𝗏𝗃 eyes danced around the room as she took in the sight and layout of his bedroom. There's so much All Might. She went over to one of the shelves before picking up a figurine and examining it. It certainly had to be a limited edition figurine, considering she had never seen it anywhere. You're a dedicated collector, huh? She voiced out her thoughts, causing the freckled boy to look at her direction. He is my childhood hero after all, Midoriya chuckled as he switched between the papers scattered on the floor, looking for the notes he intended to give to the girl. The 𝗓𝗏𝗃-eyed girl hummed in reply as she continued to look at the different figurines and posters plastered around the room. Taking a seat on his bed, she looked over to him, who seemed to be having a hard time looking for the papers. I can help you if you don't mind, she offered as she made his way over and kneeled down to his level, picking up the papers and reading what was written in them. A couple minutes pass. The two had already compiled the notes after categorizing the messy and unorganized papers scattered across the floor. Thanks for the help, 𝗓𝗏𝗃. It would have taken much longer if you didn't suggest categorizing them, no problem. Anyways, I think I overstayed my welcome. I'm gonna The The girl was surprised at the sudden burst of the male. But not only her, Midoriya was surprised at his sudden outburst as well. Why did he suddenly act up at the mention of her leaving? He wouldn't admit it, but he actually liked her company. Even if it meant sitting in a room without conversation. He found her presence comforting and exciting. Maybe it was because she never failed to surprise him. Is there something else you need? She asked, tilting her head in confusion. Did she forget something? She was certain she had her book and notes in her hand, so what could the freckled boy want from her? I was wondering if you wanted to play a game, he suggested, his eyes darting around the room before landing over to a gaming console at the corner of his room. I never knew you were a gamer, Midoriya, she commented, her eyes following his line of sight. She never took Midoriya to own a gaming console of his own, so it certainly surprised her. I wouldn't exactly consider myself one. Actually, it was a gift from a friend. I don't use it a lot though. I usually only turn it on if 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 or todoroki come over. He rubbed the back of his nape as he explained with a shrug. But before you go, do you want to play one round with me? What's in it for me? The girl's teasing demeanor appeared. She noticed that Midoriya looked stressed out lately, so she wanted to at least lighten up his mood. Besides, he was already tutoring her. Cheering him up would be a great way to pay him back for his time and company. A dare for the loser. No ifs or buts. Deal. Midoriya suggested, causing the girl to raise her eyebrow. One game, she agreed to the bet before putting down the book and papers on his study table. Awesome, let me set it up then. Midoriya stood up from where he was sitting before making his way towards the console. You sound really confident for someone who's going to lose, she grinned as she grabbed the controller laying on the floor. When it comes to a challenge, she's certainly not gonna back down. Me? No way. Now that I know there's a dare, I'm gonna win, Midoriya mirrored her competitiveness. He never took her for someone who would easily agree to something like this. She truly never failed to surprise him. Let's see about that. Taking a seat on the floor, she watched as the game turned on as Midoriya took a sit next to her. She was gonna win. I can't believe I lost, she looked at his screen defeated as it showed the words, game over, in big bold letters. I win. Izuku cheered. Wait, one more round, the 𝗧𝗵𝗲 girl pleaded, causing the green-haired male to cackle in laughter. I remember you mentioning you only wanted to play one game, Midoriya recalled as the girl huffed out a puff of air in defeat. Fine, what's the dare? She was ready for the request, sincerely hoping that it wouldn't be something embarrassing. She hoped that Midoriya would show her a bit of mercy. She knew that Izuku wouldn't request her to do anything embarrassing, but she shouldn't doubt a guy filled with surprises. Cook for me, was all he replied, causing the girl to snap her head at him. She looked at him with a questioning stare. What? No ifs, no buts. Besides, I want to taste your cooking. What are you doing here? 𝗧/N stopped walking the moment she saw her friends sitting down on the table she usually sat at with Midoriya. Well, Jirou and I were both free right now, so we decided to stick around and see what happens when he tutors. Momo flashed a teasing smile at the dumbstruck girl. Jirou glanced up from her phone before shrugging her shoulders. What? Nothing is going to happen. It's just like class. Boring lectures for an hour. The 𝗧𝗵𝗲 girl tried to persuade her friends to leave the library. She knows they meant well, but she knows they would be way too obvious with all the secret nudges and teasing glances they would be throwing her way. It doesn't seem that way from the stories you tell in the lunch table, Jirou spoke up, unplugging her earphones from her phone. She internally cursed herself for filling them up on some of the details that happens after school. Don't you have class representative meetings or something? And you? Don't you have band practice? She was clinging on to her friends' after-school activities in order for them to leave her alone. It wasn't that she hated or disliked them being there, but rather the overwhelming thought of the awkwardness that would soon spread around the table once her tutor arrives. Ida mentioned that he had everything covered. Momo perked up from her seat. The 𝗧𝗵𝗲 girl isn't gonna get rid of them that easily. We have breaks every Friday, Jirou mentioned. How could she forget that Jirou was the one that brought her to the library last Friday? A sudden ring interrupted the thick atmosphere before Jirou rushed out of the library, taking the call. Please Momo, I'm begging you. It's embarrassing with you guys watching, she whispered towards her ravenet friend who gave her a sigh in reply. We won't intrude 𝗧𝗏𝗃, okay? Besides, we're gonna be focusing on our own thing, Momo tried to reason out as she held up a science textbook in her hand. She did have a point. 𝗬𝗏𝗃. His soft green eyes widened the moment he saw a new face on the table. What was Momo doing here? Perhaps she had something to work on. Hey Midoriya, do you mind if I stick around for a while? Momo asked the freckled boy before he nodded his head in reply. After all, the library was there for everyone to use. Sure, I don't mind. How about you 𝗬𝗏𝗃? He looked over to her direction. How could she say no to the look he gave her? She can stay, I guess, she finally sighed defeated. He made his way to his usual chair before Momo stopped him. I'm sorry, that's Jirou's chair. She's just outside taking a call, Momo informed before the boy repeatedly bowed in apology. I am sorry, he frantically said before glancing over to the girl's side. Pulling up a chair beside her, he began to bring out his notes and textbooks. It was a great opportunity to get to know 𝗧𝗏𝗃 better. After all, Jirou and Momo are her best friends. Like what Momo had promised, they didn't disrupt the session and instead focused on their own thing. Momo, flipping the pages of her textbook as her gaze danced between her notes and book. Meanwhile, Jirou softly hummed to the melody playing in her earphones as her fingers drummed on the table. But apart from the quiet duo sitting across from her, Midoriya and her never conversed. He simply passed her the answer sheet as he circled the necessary text in her textbook along with his signature doodle at the corner. But apart from that, the library was quiet. Twirling the pen between her fingers, she wandered around her thoughts as she continued to stare on the paper. A nudge from her side interrupted her train of thought as Midoriya passed her his scientific calculator. 07734 was written on the calculator. Feeling a wave of nostalgia, a smile tugged on her lips as she peeled a piece of sticky note from the pad, quickly writing down something before sticking it on the shoulder of the boy. She quickly grabbed her pen before proceeding to answer the equation. Peeling the sticky note on his shoulder, he read over the familiar neat cursive that read, Hello. Poking his cheek with the cap of his pen, he jolted down, How was your day? Before passing the note back to her. It was average, I guess. I heard you got sent to Recovery Girl again. 𝗬𝗏𝗃, the clinic is basically my second home. But yeah, my day has been good. Apart from the broken bones T to the power of, haha, look on the bright side, your pain tolerance is high from it. Yeah, but it's still painful. Especially when you're fighting against Kaken, Deku, explode noises, Kaken. Did you just stutter in paper, ha? Or the two stifled out a laugh as they passed the green note back and forth. Why did she find joy in little moments like this? How is it that something so small could bring her enough butterflies to last a decade? She just hoped he felt the same way. Guys, look at this, Jirou excitedly showed her phone, breaking the ice that seemed to wrap the table for the past few minutes. This caused all eyes on the table to fall on the short female holding up her phone. I've heard of that place. They have the best takoyaki. Fat Gum approved, Izuku voiced out his thoughts as his eyes were glued on the phone. Recalling that he had seen the post from Uraraka a couple days ago. Guys, we should totally go sometime. Jirou is making me crave for takoyaki, Momo excitedly said, and on cue her stomach growled, causing the ravenet to sink back on her chair with a blush. Sunday. You up for it? Jirou asked the table. I miss hanging out with you guys, she added, causing Momo to nudge at her with a playful glare. I told you to come last Saturday, the ravenet complained to the purple-haired girl who simply smiled guiltily. But sure, I'm down. 𝗬𝗏𝗃. All eyes on the table were now on her figure. Sure. It isn't on a Saturday anyway, the girl shrugged. Saturday was a day she got to relax and make some time for herself. She would usually spend her relaxing Saturday by watching or binging her favorite series. Either that or take a train ride to her parents' house. Awesome. How about you, Midoriya? You're free to join us, Jirou asked as the male began fidgeting with the cloth of his tie. I'll see, I usually visit my mom on Sundays, he informed. Alright, it's a hangout then. Momo excitedly said before closing her book. Anyways, I'm gonna go now. I just finished my report. See you guys back in the dorm, putting her bag over her shoulders. She waved goodbye at the remaining people in the table. Yeah, I'm gonna head out too. I've been meaning to drop by somewhere, fixing her things. She wore her earphones before waving goodbye at the couple back at the table. In reality, she didn't need to go anywhere. But now that Momo was gone, there was no way she was gonna sit around and feel like a third wheel. And just like that, Midoriya and 𝗬𝗏 were alone once again. That surely was something. Midoriya chuckled at the end of his sentence as he felt the heavy atmosphere gradually get lighter and lighter. You could say that again. She closed the textbook before stretching her arms in the air. She felt accomplished that she correctly answered all 20 of Midoriya's math questions. Also, Deku, he flashed her a teasing smile as he waved the note they were passing on the entire hour. Yeah, I noticed bakugou calls you that. So Deku, she mimicked and prolonged that word like the blonde boy from their class as Midoriya cackled in laughter in the background. As the laughter and teasing died down, they began packing up their things, ready to call it a day. Oh, I just realized we never did the sticky note game today. The girl realized just as she was putting the sticky note pad back in her bag. Oh yeah, dang, I missed out a question today. Midoriya chuckled, putting the straps of his bag over his shoulders. Plus, how about this? Since we missed the sticky note game today, let's walk back to the dorms together, he suggested with his signature smile. A cold gush of wind blew through her 𝗕𝗏𝗄 locks as she stood on the side of the street waiting for them to show up. She forcefully pushed down the fabric of her dress in fear of it lifting up from the strong breeze. Why did I even wear this? She internally cursed herself at the poor decision she had made when she was choosing her wardrobe for the hangout today. But how could she not wear it after knowing that it probably cost more than her entire existence? Besides, it was a gift from Momo after putting up with her last week, and it did look good on her. She furiously typed on her keyboard as she was getting tired of standing out in the open. Where are they? Did they ditch? She thought as she walked around in a circle, looking all over the place to spot a familiar face. Sorry BBY. Something came up this morning. I'm about to fly out of country RN. Have fun though. Don't forget to tell me the details. She read from her phone as she chuckled at the girl's response. Who else can suddenly go out of the country with less than 24 hours left till school other than Momo Yaoyorozu? A few minutes passed by before she had received yet another message, but this time it was from her purple-haired friend. Girl, sorry to cancel last minute. My dad is suddenly taking me out for a concert out of town. I'll be sure to buy you something. Enjoy the hangout though. What a good waste of the weekend, she mumbled before she felt someone tap on her shoulder. Spinning around, her eyes widen as she locked eyes with the gentle and soft green eyes of her tutor. Midoriya, you're here, she managed to breath out as she took in the sight of the green-haired male in his casual wear. It was a new sight for her since she had only seen him in his uniform and sleepwear. Yeah, sorry I'm a bit late. I just came from my mom's place. He bowed in apology, who in return got a, "No, it's all right," as her response. Where are the others? He asked, looking around the area trying to spot the ravenet and purple-haired girl anywhere. Momo had to fly off somewhere and Jirou's out of town for a concert. The 𝗕𝗏𝗄 girl showed him the line of text messages from her friends. Oh, will it be just us? He asked, tilting his head in wonder. Like as a date? She felt excitement fill her up at the thought of her and Midoriya alone together. He might not think of it as a date and rather a hangout, but either way it still meant that they were alone together. Do you want it to be just us? The girl reversed the question back to the green-haired male, who thought about it for a few minutes. Hold on, I'll try calling some of my friends. He excused himself before dialing a number and putting it against his ear. He walked off for a bit before he began chatting away with the person on the other end of the line. Soon, he came back with a downcast look on his face as he nervously rubbed the back of his head. They're sort of busy today, he announced, switching his phone back off and sliding it into his back pocket. Really? Did you ask Ida? He has a family thing going on, Uraraka. She's visiting her parents, Tsu. She needs to watch her siblings today. Todoroki. He mentioned that he was visiting his mother, bakugou. Keikaken. Don't ask. She stifled up a laugh at the way Midoriya dismissed the bakugou question. Everyone seemed to be busy this Sunday. Maybe things would have been different if they had agreed to meet on a Saturday. But there's no use in thinking about it for now. Will it be okay if it's just the two of us? He asked as he tried to meet her eyes. She was refusing to meet his eyes because she knows that the moment she does, she knows her face will be red as ever. However, his soft gaze gazing over her features were like magnets to her own. Without control, her eyes lock with his. Why, I don't mind. What do you want to do? She threw in a question at the end of her statement to cover up the shaking in her voice, and surprisingly it worked. The things they could do were endless. Would he find it entertaining if they both see a movie? Those little moments like laughing at one scene and then looking at each on instinct. Or how their hands would brush with one another when they both reach out for the tub of popcorn. Or maybe they could go in the park, sitting on the bench as they watch the clouds pass above their heads as they both talk about their dreams. Or how they both sit back to back, with ice cream in their hands as they let nostalgia hit them once they see the running kids on the playground next to the park. Oh, I know. Midoriya snapped his fingers, a habit of his whenever he had an idea. Grabbing her hand, he led her through a crowd of people before going down a flight of stairs. Where are we going? She walked by his side and yet he never chose to let go of her hand. Walking side by side, they finally reached where Midoriya wanted to take her. We're going wherever the train takes us, he excitedly said, quoting her words from the sticky note game. She was surprised that he still remembers something she had said a few days ago, but then again this was Midoriya Izuku. Really? She laughed at the enthusiasm of the male. It wasn't that she was making fun of him, but rather she found it cute how his eyes light up at the idea of taking the train to nowhere. Yeah, of course. It seems fun. He excitedly pulled her into the train. Really? I expected something like, let's go to the library, or let's go for a movie, she voiced out her thoughts. I'm not that boring, he pouted at her as she giggled in reply. Look, I don't know, okay? It just seems weird that we aren't talking about something like calculus, she shrugged. Don't think about it that way, he nudged at her with a smile as the train doors began to close. Think about today as a day we get to be ourselves, he suggested, causing the girl to raise her eyebrow back in reply. What do you mean by be ourselves? Just for today, don't think of me as your tutor. Think of me as Izukumidoriya. In return, I'll think of you as Y/NL/N, just as Zuku and Y/N, he added. I've been meaning to ask you, what do you think of my playlist? Midoriya asked as he scrolled through the different apps in his phone. It had already been 30 minutes since they had taken the train to nowhere, and the sky just begun to turn dull. Oh, not gonna lie, you have great taste in music. It honestly surprised me that you listened to that, the girl honestly replied, looking at the droplets of water that now begun to cover the glass windows of the train. Really? Not gonna lie, I didn't expect you to listen to those songs as well. So I guess we both learned something new about each other. He shrugged his shoulders as he pulled out his earphones. Wanna share? Let's listen to my playlist this time. Midoriya offered her the other end of his earphones and of course, she accepted. The train was deafeningly silent, considering that there were only a few people in the same train as they were. The sound of the train's movement along the rails were all they could hear, apart from the occasional pitter-patter of the droplets of water from the roof. A calming song soon played in their ears the moment Midoriya chose to hit shuffle. A song only the couple could hear. Honestly, never would have she believed that someday she would be taking a ride with Midoriya with the plus of them sharing earphones. She would never believe anyone who would tell her that, and yet here she is living that very moment. I like this song, she commented as she rested her back on the cushioned seat. Really? How so? His eyes were closed when he had asked the question. She took this as a chance to properly look at him. The way the setting sun's rays highlighted his face perfectly made him look ethereal. It looked like he wanted to stay in this moment for a long time, and honestly, she felt the same way. She wanted this moment to last. She didn't want this to suddenly fade into a distant memory. Just cause, he opened up his eyes only for it to immediately catch her appealing E/C eyes gazing back at his. He caught his breath as he never realized how appealing and tantalizing those eyes were. Why do you always say that? He asked her, finally tearing away from her gaze. What do you mean by that? I mean, you always say, just cause, and end it there. I never quite understood you. He was honest about it. Her words never seemed to leave his head, leaving him with wandering thoughts in the night. so maybe he could get the answers he wanted. You know the feeling of loving or liking something so much that words can't express it. It might sound cliché or cringy if I put it that way. But, just cause, is just my way of expressing that, she explained, looking at the dark and clouded sky as it began to pour down. Honestly, she was surprised at how observant Midoriya was. A couple minutes of silence passed by, but this time it wasn't the awkward and uncomfortable silence. This time, it was a very comforting silence. The song that hummed in her ears soon caused her eyelids to become heavy. A yawn escaping her mouth, he glanced at her before gently tilting her head towards his shoulder. She looked at him with confused yet tired eyes. He mouthed the words, "It's before she finally let sleep overtake her. Glancing at her figure taking in deep breaths, he smiled to himself. Sleep well, 𝗧/N, and let your dreams take us to nowhere.